Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I really have fond memories of being in Poland, excuse me, last year. So it was an excellent conference, and so I'm excited to present again. This presentation, The Art of the Breach. This presentation is a physical security presentation. However, I've added a few twists. One is I really like physical security, and all the presentations I've watched always focus on a specific area. And what I've always wanted to see was, okay, that's great, but how do I go further? Or how do I go all the way into a building from the sidewalk all the way into, say, the executive filing cabinet, right? So the complete journey. So that's what I want to take you on today. But then also, due to what I do and the people I spend time with, I have special knowledge around what we call forced entry. So what I want to do is add that on as well as a third option. As we proceed through that building, we're going to look at passive entry, social engineering, covert entry, which is, lock picking and that sort of thing. But then also forced entry, which is really just kind of brute force. I'm getting in any means possible. So that's the journey I want to take you on today. A little bit about myself before we get started. So I am the founder and president of the nonprofit called Trace Labs. We do crowdsourcing for open source intelligence for missing persons. We do monthly CTFs. We have one coming up next week. If you're interested, if you go to our website, you'll find more information about that. As a profession, of course, I work in IT, and security is a big component of that in the aerospace industry. I've been doing that for more years than I can remember. I've competed at DEF CON twice in the SE CTF, came in third twice there. Great experience. For anybody who's planning to do that, let me know and I can give you some tips on that. I also volunteer, so in search and rescue, and specialize as a tracker, and that actually helps me quite a bit with my OSINT. And if you want to reach out to me, my Twitter and email address are there. In particular, if you have suggestions for this talk, that would be great. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. Okay, so the standard disclaimer. Really, this material doesn't represent any employers, past, present, or future. I have a lot of bad ideas, and so I wouldn't want that to transfer onto anybody else. Also, risk of incarceration. Of course, this material is going to take you through the journey from sidewalk to filing cabinet, and we're going to go through that, and we're going to show you from an attacker's point of view. And of course, that could be used poorly in the wrong hands. So really what I need to do is make sure that you all understand that really this is for educational purposes, for a defender to see how an attacker would think, how an attacker would proceed with your physical security, and how as a defender you can defend against that. All right, so this overlay is basically a graphical representation of what we're going to do today. So we're going to start off with some homework and go through the research, and then we're going to arrive on site, that icon 3 in the bottom corner, and then we're going to navigate our way through the building, deploying different security breach techniques. So the first thing we want to do is, of course, research our target. This is where our OSINT comes in. We want to do, of course, our passive reconnaissance, what I also call zero-touch reconnaissance. We don't want them to know we're looking, of course, and we want to start off at a high level and drill down into details. Just deploying some best practices for OSINT, and we teach a lot of this at Trace Labs. You want to probably use a dedicated VM if you can. Use sock puppets if you can. If you're not accustomed to using sock puppets, or if you don't have those set up, you can use your account, but you'd have to be extremely careful. During the SECTF, I used my own account on LinkedIn, and I'm looking at everybody's profile, and the next day I noticed they're all looking back at me. So total newbie mistake. You don't want to do that. So learn from my mistakes. VPN, of course, is great too, and not just to protect your security, but it's also handy to be able to appear somewhere else for OSINT and for this sort of thing. So there are several reasons why you may want to look at a VPN for this type of work. And then, of course, finally, organizing your OSINT. So this is a big deal, and I think a lot of people jump into an OSINT operation without properly kind of preparing for it that way. Where am I going to put all my stuff, right? How am I going to organize it by category? What's important? All those details. So stop and put some thought into that before you jump right into it. All right. The other thing we want to do is really understand their business, right? Do they make tires? Are they a security company? Because that would make a big difference, right? If their focus is security, they're going to actually probably have a higher level of security, we hope. How big is it? How many employees? Is it just an executive office or just a field office? What does that look like? Look at the employees online, or are there a lot of social butterflies? That's the 80-20 rule. I'm going to focus on those social butterflies because that's where I'm going to get all my good OSINT, right? I find that there's usually a couple people in any office that are just giving you everything. So those are the ones you want to check out. Vendors, this is another great one. So this will help us develop our pretexts when we want to get into the building, because maybe I'm going to show up as their parking vendor or their cafeteria vendor or their shredding vendor, anything like that. But if I know who that company is, I can better prepare for that. And now we want to take a look at their infrastructure. So all the services that they consume, I'm interested in, but then also what are the things that are on site? One of the things you can often find is the floor plans. So if you can find if they are renting or leasing the building, you can often find that online with the property management company. First responder key boxes. So I'm going to get into that. That's going to be really interesting. So cafeteria or gym, which one do they have, if any? HVAC on the roof, that's one of my go-to pretexts because I know a lot about that, so it's easy for me to talk about it. Whatever you know a lot about is much easier to use as your pretext. So that's what I'd highly recommend in that case. Ingress egress points. So it's, if I do get in, okay, how do I get out, right? So I really want to make sure that I understand my path for exit. If I'm all the way in and all of a sudden I have to get out in a hurry, that's something I really need to think about. And you'll find that real criminals are very concerned about that too. The last thing that they want is to be stuck with their hand in the cookie jar and get caught with evidence. We've had incidents where the person is confronted and they're trying to hide the stolen property, right, as they evade. So watch out for that. Magnetic locks. So during a power outage, is it secure open or secure fail? What does that look like? Perimeter layers. This is very important too. So as a defense, layering is highly recommended. So man traps, fences, all those things that deter attackers and make them think, yeah, I'm going to go somewhere else. So that's what we want to look for as an attacker. Understand the defenses. So do you have guards? Do you have CCTV? All these things are going to deter me. They're all going to add up to that big picture. What type of door locks do you have, right? Did you just buy the cheapo locks, or do you have good quality locks that are going to cause me a problem? Patterns of life. So is the office open 24/7, and maybe they have a reduced security at certain points? Is it a very fluid environment where we see people coming and going all the time, or is it much more formalized? So everybody's maybe wearing a suit with official ID. You know, what does that look like? And great sources for that, of course, are YouTube office tours. I find are golden. If you can find one of those, if your company has one of those out there, I would watch it in slow motion and even frame by frame if you want, because I can tell you as an attacker, you can quite often find just golden nuggets out of that. What type of ID cards they use, where security cameras are, all the good stuff. So, and then of course, employee social media is usually, you're going to find one or two people that have a lot of information. So I think that companies really should spend more time looking at their employees as far as what they post. Putting out the VPN information is not a good idea. Putting out what kind of cards they use, not a good idea. So some governance around that would be a good idea. Now we want to basically now we've done our research, and now we want to prepare our pretexts. We really want to build those stories and have them very comfortable. And so some of those that we can use are new employee or contractor. That's good because you can act confused. Oh, I don't know where I'm going. I'm not sure where the office is. Can you help me? Those are always really good. Parking company attendant. Make sure it's the right company. Otherwise, that can be a red flag. A lot of people like internet technician. It's not one of my personal favorites, but I see it used all the time. HVAC, that's one of my go-tos. Personal trainer, that could be tricky, but doable. And then security guard is tricky as well. And make sure that you're not impersonating an official police or fire or anything like that. That has been done. People have done that and they've gone to jail. So you want to stay clear of that sort of thing. Even if you are a criminal, I don't think it would be a good idea because the cost is so high, right? I think if you're doing this as an exercise, I still would not do that. So I'm getting some connection errors as I'm moving forward. So if I'm lagging out, please just tell me in the comments. I think it's still good, but if it is lagging, let me know and I'll slow down a little bit. All right, so with our pretext, what we really want to do at the end of the day is make sure that we're comfortable with our pretext and make sure that we have that feeling that we belong. We should be able to walk into the building very comfortable. That's what a good social engineer will achieve, that level of comfort. And not only that, but the level of almost invisibility. So I should be able to walk in there and you're not going to look at me like, who's that? And what are they doing? So almost that gray man sort of feel, right? So I can kind of walk past people without drawing a lot of attention. I mean, you could go the other way and get a lot of attention just to look more like you belong, but I wouldn't recommend that. It's too high risk. So pretext, if you get caught, a lot of people in the social engineering world will say, if you get caught, just keep with the same pretext. Even when they're putting the handcuffs on, just stay with the same pretext. I don't really believe that. I think that you can evolve. One of my favorites that I've always wanted to do is congratulate people and say, hey, congratulations, you caught me. Because that makes people feel good, right? And that's the whole objective of social engineering, is to make people feel good and happy, have that that dialogue, right? So, hey, congratulations, you caught me. I'm here to test your defenses. Can you help me get to the next level and tell me how to open that door, or something like that, right? Like, bring them into it if you want. And I think that would work on other CTFs like the SCCTF as well. So that's, if you ever have done that, let me know, because it's one of my favorites. I'd always like to evolve that. Property management, I think that's quite often a good one, unless you run into property management. Locksmith, that's really, I think, quite a good one, because the risk there is much lower. Locked out of my office, that's higher risk, because they may say, well, no, that's not your office. I've had that happen on phone calls before. And then just a random employee just fumbling around could work too. So those are some, but of course your knowledge is going to vary. So pick ones that work for you. Now we're on site. We've done all of our research. We're on site. We're showing up to the building, and we want to kind of case the building out, see if our research is still accurate, right? So that classic saying, trust but verify, right? So we want to trust our research, but verify that it's still correct, because they may have made changes. There may be construction, there may be new CCTV cameras, and we want to be very careful that we don't expose ourselves to those cameras before we even start. And I think that as far as defenses on your building, real criminals, when they're doing their reconnaissance, as little as they may do, they're going to be conscious of that. So when they see the camera, fake or real, they're going to have a reaction to that. So I think that's, as far as layering your defenses go, cameras are an excellent option. Of course, you want to make sure you're covering certain areas with it, of course. So what I'm going to look for when I arrive on site, of course, what's changed, what's the same, are there guards, door locks? If I can take a look at the door locks and get close enough for that without a camera capturing me, or if I can hide myself, my face when I'm looking at that, that's really what I want to try to do, is get in there, take a close look at those locks. That's going to tell me what level I'm going to do. Am I going to do just lock picking, or am I going to just bust the door and the lock? Any sort of man traps, I want to try to avoid all of those if I can. I'll take a look at the back door. Is that an easier option? Any new opportunities as well. So we talked about new risk, but there could be new opportunities. So construction could be a great new opportunity. Usually there's a lot of chaos there. So things like that, I definitely want to take a look at. Now, the front door. This is the most obvious choice for an attack. However, it is also the most complex. And so because our operation is going to be quite lengthy, we're going quite deep into the building, and we're going really into one of the most risky areas. We probably want to be as stealthy as possible when we go in. And real attackers will often do this as well, unless there's very few people in the building and the risk of noise and destruction is low. But initially, especially as I'm going through the first layers of a defense, I kind of want to test it out. So if I do get caught, I haven't broken anything. I'm not liable. So I can just say, oh, sorry, wrong building. I was looking for my doctor's office, right? So I usually want to be more stealthy, at least initially. Front doors usually are very difficult, highest level of surveillance, man traps, active guards, receptionists, forced interaction quite often, which is difficult. So they could ask you, oh, excuse me, can I help you? And really good companies with a good security culture will do that. They'll train their receptionists to do that sort of thing, to make interaction, to make eye contact. If the people come in the building don't make eye contact, that can be a red flag. And especially if you don't recognize them. Of course, if you recognize them as a standard employee, that's different. But yeah, so for front doors, often difficult. One of the things that I think would be, this is more of a sophisticated attack for attackers, but I think it has so much potential with the cloning of cards. If I can clone a card, I can basically walk in like I own the place, because now I do. I can put in this device, this ESP key. I walk up to the card scanner, especially if it's on the outside, and put on my shirt that says I'm the card manufacturer. I'm swapping out the batteries, have somebody with a clipboard standing over me, making sure I'm doing everything correctly. 5-minute job, plug this in. Now it's sending your creds to my phone in the parking lot. I collect everything, and now I can walk in as anybody with that card. So much more sophisticated than your average attacker would do. But if security is high on your list, especially physical security, I would make sure you've got the tamper alarms on these devices so that if people try to go do this, they're not taking everything from you. So I found from my research, not many of these do. So 99%. So that's not good. All right, front door, don't have the access card. You're going to walk in with social engineering, passive entry method. This dude is awesome, right? He's got a big smile, so friendly. You know, you're going to say good morning to this guy as he walks through. Hey, can I help you with the door? He's all loaded up with stuff, right? That's great. He's got his tool belt, right? Which makes him look legitimate, but also it's a great place to put your forced entry tools. So you've got everything. So it doesn't look like you're carrying this big bag of criminal intent, right? It's really, I'm just a legit guy trying to do some work. So good in so many ways. And so yeah, being able to carry your tools in there. So now you're ready, you're all set up for that forced entry should you need to use it. Now, covert entry mode on front doors. This door, you can see it kind of on the bottom half of this image. This type of door lock is very popular in warmer climates. You see it all over the place. But of course, there's a tool for that, which can quickly allow you to open that. You can fix the door so that it won't do that, which I would highly recommend, because this door, to open it, is about 30 seconds, if that, if you know what you're doing. And this tool is super easy to use. A lot of people, that's their front door. And once you're past that, you usually have entry to a lot of other stuff. So I highly recommend, if you're in the physical security area or responsibility for your company, take a look at those. Super easy. Minimal time. All right, forced entry mode for the front door. And these are the first responder boxes that you will sometimes see. They're usually put in a place where you wouldn't necessarily look. But this basically, just like cloning a card, will give you God mode to your building. Inside these boxes are every lock for your building, because they're designed for firemen to open, and if there's a fire, to use to go through your building. So if you are responsible for the security, physical security in your building, you may want to talk to the property management about these boxes and see what they do actually contain. Because if I break this open, which is totally possible if I can find it, most people don't know what these are, so the risk for real criminals is fairly low. But once you get it, you have God mode. So find out what's in the box, what they have access to. Maybe they don't need access to your data center, right? Maybe they don't need access to the executive floor. So there's some things there. Once I get this, sure, there might be an alarm on your building, but if every employee has the code, I'm going to guess one of those common codes are going to work, and I'm all set, right? So something to look into. Now, you'll see that these come in several different forms depending on what country you're in. I've got some other examples there. And there's a great presentation specifically on this from the RSA conference 2013, where he goes through these a little bit more. But these are a real risk. Luckily, not many people know about them, but they're becoming more popular since 2013. So definitely take a look at that. Now we're going to get into some of the forced entry tools that would be used. And some of these are used by criminals. They will be modified and simplified by criminals. And of course, the time taken to use these as well is going to be longer. So, and I'm going to show you how long it takes to use some of these tools. The classic wedge, this is usually made out of aluminum. It's lightweight. It's got the holes to reduce the weight. But it's a critical tool. And it's quite often, sometimes criminals will use a rock or whatever they can find from opportunity to do this, but it's basically used to jam into a door or window or any entry point to make space, so you can then leverage more. So if you see one of these things lying outside of your building or something similar, you probably want to remove it. So one of the things you can do for physical security is not only do surveillance around your building, but just do a walk around once in a while and see what kind of debris is out there. You don't want things like this lying around outside, because criminals will just pick them up and use them. Part of the fireman's kit and first responders kit, and they're a great tool. Wire cutters. So wire cutters or side cutters, sometimes used, are called. Great for cutting wire. So if you have a fence, we could cut that. But also for shearing the nails or screws that are sometimes used in a door. So they're multi-purpose, highly effective, a lot of leverage with those. I can also use them as a poor man's wedge as well. So if you see these lying around, that's a bad sign. This is a little bit more interesting, right? If you see this in someone's tool belt, that's going to be more of a tell than just wire cutters. Wire cutters look fairly benign, but these are modified channel lock pliers. And the beautiful thing about these is you now have a multi-tool, 3 different tools in one. The classic usage of this tool is to simply remove your lock, that Mortise lock that I have a picture of on the left there. I can just unscrew that with this tool, pop it out, your door opens. Very quick to do, and a lot of front doors will have that. And so you may want to take a look at that. Make sure it's not your only line of defense, right? This tool you're probably fairly familiar with, the shove knife. This is very common. If you go to conferences, you can quite often buy this. It's I'm not going to go too deep into it because I think the lockpicking community has a fairly good familiarity with it. But it is a great tool to have because it will solve a lot of your problems with locked doors, unfortunately. You can use it many different ways depending on the type of door handle that you're dealing with. But a great tool to have if you want to play with lockpicking. This tool is a great thing to practice because it is such a common problem solver with doors. Now we're getting into more of the harder core first responder forced entry tools. This called a roof hook. It's quite a long tool. It gives you a lot of leverage. It gives you multiple tools in one: chiseling, smashing. It's like a lever action. It's a very sophisticated tool, so I don't expect real attackers to use this very much. There's other tools that are better. The standard crowbar is probably used more by just common attackers, but this one's a little bit more sophisticated. This tool here is my personal favorite. It's a shorter tool than the previous one. This crowbar, or often called the Halligan. It's very common among firefighters because it is highly effective. In the hands of the right person, this tool can basically help you move through almost any door, usually in seconds, sometimes minutes, right? So it gives you incredible leverage. The different points on this tool can allow you to pop hinges, to remove rivets, to do all sorts of amazing things very quickly. So now we're going to take a look at the back door. Those were some quick tools, but I'm going to talk about how to use them as well as we proceed through. But Now let's take a look at that back door real quick. So the back doors are quite often great for attackers. Usually if you've got a loading dock, that's usually wide open. There's usually people out there relaxing, not really relaxing, but taking breaks sometimes, and just moving things around. A little bit of chaos is great for an attacker to kind of move through. One of the things to watch out for as an attacker is if there's people that are diligent on safety. Usually it's less security and more safety, right? Hey, are you wearing a hard hat? Hey, are those steel-toed boots, right? Especially in a union environment or something like that, you could definitely see some of that going on. So if an attacker is going to move through here, it can be difficult if they're not dressed in the right attire with that sort of thing. But it also makes a great egress option, right? So if attackers are coming out, that could be a place they would want to exit from, because moving past that is going to be actually easier than going in for sure. Back doors. So quite often back doors are overlooked a little bit, right? They're usually an exit point, not always an entry point. So it could be a place for forced entry, or a better option for covert entry, of course, lock picking. You know, it usually avoids man traps as well. Guards and receptionists are usually not stationed there. And then also it offers a good egress point as well, right? So if I want to get out, that's a good idea. If I'm coming in through that, through social engineering, I could do that if people are having a smoke break, but it doesn't really legitimize my pretext as much as coming through the front door would. So if you have success coming in that way, you could leave that way. So steel doors, quite often attackers will see steel doors there, or you may use steel doors in your business. On this particular case, I know that picture is a bit hard to see. It's quite small, but it looks fairly secure, right? It looks not too bad. That can be breached in about 2 minutes. So 2 minutes is not a long time, right? 2 minutes of, it's going to involve a little bit of noise, but 2 minutes is pretty quick, right? For a kind of run-of-the-mill criminal, I think it's going to take more than 2 minutes, of course, but still not that long if they have a crowbar and they kind of know what they're doing. Two-man team, definitely within 2 minutes with professionals. There's no deadbolts. There's no sophistication there other than just the steel door. A lot of people will say, hey, Rob, attack the hinges. Yeah, you can. Some people will, and this tool is great for that. It's a spring-loaded tool, so you can pull it and release it. Pops the idea is it pops the hinges, the hinge pins out. Yeah, that could work, but what you'll find is now you're attacking 3 different areas rather than just the one. So hinges are doable, and you definitely want to secure your hinges. One of the things I would recommend are stud hinges, especially on your outside perimeter. That's a quick and easy option that you can do that will prevent a tool like this from breaking your hinges. Definitely take a look at that. And all this information is in my references slide at the very end of this. So if you get my slide deck, you can find out where to buy this tool or the stud hinges and things like that. But I find going after the lock is quite often a better option. And also, if you break the hinges, it's non-reversible. So when someone sees the door on the ground, that's going to be a pretty clear tell that somebody's broken into the building. So for more covert entry, not necessarily recommended. More back doors. So look at this door, right? You've got the lock, the key lock. You've also got a padlock, and then you've got those studs in the door. And those studs represent an arm that is behind the door. Quite often it's a wood 2x4 or something like that. And this offers a little bit more challenge, right? Because now you may be thinking, well, Rob, now I'm going to go for the hinges because now it's so secure. Not necessarily the case, right? So for example, that padlock, about 5 seconds. And I'm going to show you how to do that. The studs, again, just you can either shear those off with your side cutters or pop them out with your Halligan, just bash them through. And then that lock can be removed with your vice grips, right? So not that difficult still. I mean, much more of a deterrent for your street criminals for sure. And I think this would be a recommended perimeter back door for sure, because criminals are going to look at that and go, yeah, maybe not. But not totally safe. This shows you the aftermath of that, right? So cutting the deadbolt or popping it, the work arm can discard that once you pop those, and it doesn't actually show that, but those studs or rivets there, you just pop those through or grind them off. So that's about 6 minutes with a 2-man team. So a little longer. You've definitely made some time there. And adding more time is good because the noise is going to be heard, hopefully, by other people. Now, for anybody who's watched No Country for Old Men, this is kind of the over-the-counter equivalent of that tool. If you haven't watched that show and you're interested in physical security, the show is a bit gory, okay? There's some violence in the show, so extreme violence. So if you're not into that, don't watch it. But the tool that he is carrying it's a multi-purpose tool, unfortunately, but one of the purposes that it's used for is removing locks off of doors. It does it very quickly. The tool on the left you can buy for $230 American, I think it is, might be Canadian, and it's very quick and it's not very loud. If you're familiar with Lockpick Lawyer, you can go to his website or his YouTube channel. It's amazing. Anything to do with breaking locks or lock picking, fantastic resource. It's in my resources page. But this, you could put it in your belt loop, walk up to a padlock, boom, it's open. And it will be a little bit loud because it takes a 22 shell or a .27 round shell to open it, but it will open any lock basically, right? So pretty amazing. And you can just buy it over the counter. Now you're in the lobby. You've gotten past the first perimeter. You're in the lobby, and you're looking at what it's going to offer you. So we want to watch out for these things, any sort of physical barriers, alarms, security guards. Be ready for that because you're probably going to see it in the lobby. If you don't have that in your lobby, you probably want to look at that. When you're in the lobby, you either want to be extremely comfortable or not comfortable and just avoid the lobby and find an alternate ingress point, like the back door. Now we're in the hallway. We've progressed. We're in the building, further in, and the hallways are great, I find, because they're secluded usually, but it's a man trap. So if someone stops me in the hallway, I only have forward and back to go. So I love the mirrors that are sometimes in the corner of hallways so you can see people in the hallway. Those are a great tool to have so you can see if people are lingering or hiding in a hallway. Attackers quite often will walk with purpose because they don't want you to stop them. So if somebody's blaring away on their phone, that could be a pretext. If they're not making eye contact with you, if you don't recognize them, that's another sign. So if I see somebody in my building that I don't recognize, I will say, hi, really loud, hi. And if they don't look up, I'm going to walk in front of them and say, hey, are you new? Hey, I'm Rob. Nice to meet you. And I'm just going to be obnoxious, right? Because I want to make sure that they are actually an employee. And if they're a new employee and I'm this obnoxious, super happy person welcoming them to the company, that's not a bad thing, right? That's kind of a good thing. But if they're a criminal, at least I'm going to discover that as well. So that's a technique you can use. Elevator. I'm in the elevator. There's some great presentations that are strictly focused on the elevator. I highly recommend you to go take a look at those. I'm not going to go deep into this, but if you learn just a little bit about elevators, and criminals could do this quite easily, you could just camp in the elevator, put an out of order sign on it, walk in, sit there until the business is closed, then come out, when everybody's gone home. There's some great videos on that. I don't see criminals doing that very much, but it is a great option, and I would anticipate as people get more sophisticated to do that more. Stairs. Less people use the stairs because it's harder, right? So you'll find less people in there. Criminals like to use stairs. Of all the criminal activity that I've seen, especially for stolen equipment, they use the stairs. They don't want to get caught in the elevator, so they'll run down the stairs, especially to get out, right? So having cameras in the stairs is a high opportunity area for criminal activity as well, violence as well. So having cameras in the staircase is recommended. Clone cards, if you have your clone card, of course, use the stairs as well. It's going to help you get through all the doors. Now we're in the executive office. Now this is interesting, right? Because usually an executive office is almost like a whole different kind of sub environment from the rest of the building. You're going to have probably fancier, higher quality equipment. Now we're going to try to get into the filing cabinet. I'm going to anticipate that that's going to be not just the run-of-the-mill filing cabinet. That may be actually a more high grade, more secure filing cabinet. And I'm at a higher risk now. So criminals will be very careful when they're in this sort of area because they know their exposure level is extremely high. So they're either going to be very quick or they're going to be very careful, probably both, right? But if I don't have a solid pretext, if I'm not in uniform or a pretext outfit, then I'm going to be very uncomfortable in this environment. So I'm going to be as fast as possible. I'm also going to try to avoid detection, so closing the blinds, closing the door, doing all those things if I need to be in there for a prolonged period of time. So also, if they get caught, they're going to be thinking about that, right? If I get caught, what am I going to say? So they may sound initially smooth if you catch them in there, because they're going to be thinking, I'm probably going to get caught if I'm in here too long. The filing cabinet, not very secure, right? Most of the time, you can just pop this open with a nail clip or filing cabinet to the lock. It's not, don't think that your stuff is secure if you've locked it in there. You can turn it upside down. Again, that's going to make some noise and be difficult if it's heavy, but there's usually a push rod that you can activate. If all of those things don't work, you can just drill the lock, of course, if you've got time and you don't mind the noise. Bump key, I love bump keys, so you could look into that as well. But drilling or impact is going to be your last line of defense there. You could technically just pry bar the drawers open, but that's going to be really messy and probably even more time consuming as well. So yeah, so watch out for that. I think that that I would often in an executive office just take a look for the key in the office and look around. Quite often you'll find it probably in the first drawer. So watch out for that. All right, now we finally got into the filing cabinet. We've picked it up, and now we're ready to get out of there. And this could be any sort of criminal objective. So maybe I am picking up laptops. This is one case that I had where a criminal was walking into the premise, going to various floors, just shadowing people into the secure area, just walking in behind as they open the door with their card, and they would pick up laptops and put them in their back of their pants or in a carry bag that they had, and then they would just casually walk out, right? But so initially they have low risk when they're in, and then as an attacker, you're thinking, okay, well, I haven't done anything necessarily bad yet. Maybe they're all the way to the executive office. Have they really committed a crime other than, say, trespass, which is very hard to prosecute, until they actually do the crime? So if they break something, that's going to be a crime. If they pick something up and try to steal it, that's going to be a crime as well. But again, you have to prove that. So those are the two kind of things you're looking for. So once they actually pick something up, now it's all about escape and evade, and avoiding detection, but also just not being detained. So some of the things you want to look out for are doors being left ajar. So why is that door open? Why is there a chair leaving that door open? One of the things you want to look out for, which is harder to detect, is if people put tape over the lock of the door so that it just freely opens, right? It's hard to see that. The door will close. It looks normal. So if you have an alarm on your doors to detect that, that's probably the easiest thing to do. Or auto-locking doors that are carded, of course, that's good as well. But that's what they're going to want to do. They're going to want to escape as quickly as possible. Some of the things that they can do is the fire alarm. That's a very mean trick to do, but it is done. So they pull the fire alarm. Everybody rushes out of the building. Well, they don't necessarily rush these days, but they're leaving en masse. First aid, any sort of first aid alarm. So maybe there's a call that somebody's having a first aid problem. That's going to cause panic. And yeah, again, don't do a pretext if you're doing it as a exercise as firemen or law enforcement or first aid. You'll get yourself in a lot of trouble with that. They'll want to move with the crowd if possible. So especially in the lobby area, if there's a security guard there or anything like that, they're going to want to try to hide themselves within the crowd as much as possible. Not only does it put a barrier between them and the security guard, which is what they want, but it also kind of blurs them out as they proceed through. Yeah, back of the head to the CCTV reduces forensics risk. So they will be conscious of their face being on camera. So they will try to guard that. So the hoodie over the face, the ball cap covering the face, the hand over the face, right? Anything that covers your face. When law enforcement is doing forensics on that, they're going to want to see the face. Even depending on the location that you live in, even if police have video evidence of the face, that does not guarantee you a criminal prosecution or arrest. So keep that in mind. Many people have been disappointed with that. So the other thing to think about is a lot of criminal activity will be by criminals that are not necessarily living in a permanent structure. So they may be transient. So law enforcement may have a very difficult time, even with a positive video ID, actually finding that person, right? So keep that in mind. They also may drop stuff on the way out, and this is very common. So if this is a crime of opportunity, they may use a crowbar to break in, but then as they're coming out, maybe they don't want people to see them carrying a crowbar now that they've got $10,000 worth of electronics in their pants and their backpack and things like that. So you want to, on a regular basis, check those areas. Bathrooms are a great place for criminals to seek refuge and also to hide things. Back of the toilet, in the roof, if you've got roof tiles, that's another opportunity area, a little more difficult, but totally doable. Areas like that, under the desks, things like that. So do a regular check of that to make sure that they don't come back and reuse those tools or those things. The other thing that I often see people mistake is your security guards, especially unarmed security guards, are not necessarily going to detain people. So a lot of times the security guards that are just kind of standing outside of a building and things like that are really just there for reconnaissance, are really just there to let you know if the alarm is going off, to see what's going on, but they're not going to chase down people necessarily and detain them. Especially, they usually don't have handcuffs or firearms or anything, things like that would be used to detain people, and that's probably fine, but just don't assume that they're going to do that. So I've had occasions where that was the assumption and people are disappointed. So yeah. Now you've escaped. Okay, so you've escaped with that, and you're safe back out on the sidewalk, and congratulations on that. I hope that's given you an idea of how attackers could use the different disciplines, including forced entry. I think that forced entry is often overlooked quite a bit because attackers are generally not sophisticated, and generally it's a crime of opportunity. Hey, I see a lot of people coming out of that building carrying laptops. I could sell those laptops, therefore I'm going to walk into the building and see if I can pick some up, right? If they've got some pliers, some side cutters, anything that provides leverage on your desk, on your door, whatever, they're probably going to want to use that. So, so yeah, keep that in mind. Hopefully that was informative for you. These are some of the references that I used in this. I highly recommend, if you want to dig deeper in any of these particular areas, to take a look at those. Some great experts that go deep in areas like the elevators. That is alone super fascinating. So take a look at that. All right, so I think I'm at time there now, so open to Q&A.